There we go.
Awesome.
So
Thanks, Kim.
we'll let that marinate for a second and let some folks get in here. And I am rearranging all kinds of stuff on my screen. Do you use multiple monitors?
I use 2, which is plenty for me. I think if I had a third, I would probably be too overwhelmed.
Same. However, Brian Walker is Mr. Multiple, like,
Well, he's just too fancy. Brian, he's fancy. He's got it all figured out.
Yeah.
Maybe one of these days we'll be able to follow suit.
I don't want to follow suit. That is the thing.
Yeah.
And he's got them turned funny ways. Like, he's got one of them is tall, and then I think he's got 2 or 3 that are this way. And
oh wow, okay.
And then he complains that he's ADD. I'm like, well, look what you're doing to yourself. You've got how can you stay focused when you have stuff everywhere? But that's him. That's him. I don't know what to say about that. But anyways, well, we got the link posted in our client only Facebook group. Josh, we're going to let people just trickle in as they want to, but a lot of times people watch after as well. So, all of our coaching Q&As that we've done this year have all been you're a coach too, but you're a leadership coach. They've been the other coaches in the industry that do other stuff. And then we've also had Rena in here for service advisor specific coaching. But today we're switching it up. I was intentionally using the same questions for all of the other coaches because I wanted our clients to hear all these coaches, but answering the same questions, having different perspectives. So you're throwing me a wrench here today with the leadership topic, which I'm honestly really happy to have you here today. Y'all, we have Josh Parnell with Unlimitless. Limitless. Did I type the wrong thing?
No, I think you had it. You said Limitless earlier.
I just got tongue-tied, I guess. Yeah. So yeah, and you have a podcast, you have this history with Christian Brothers for a long time. And I was telling you earlier that I remember earlier this year, I don't even know, it might have been the end of last year. But at some point, I started seeing this Josh Parnell everywhere. Like, all my friends were friends with them, and it kept recommending you as a friend. And I'm like, who is this guy? Where is he coming from? So for those clients of ours who maybe haven't had the pleasure of meeting you, normally I would wait to introduce and all that. I don't really it drives me crazy when people start off with this whole bio thing. I like to just unpack your story as we're going throughout. But there are likely going to be some people here who don't know you. So take a moment to just share, who is Josh Parnell? Where did you come from? And let us know what you want us to know.
Yeah. Well, Kim, thanks for the opportunity to be here. It's a privilege. It's an honor. For those who don't know, Shop Marketing Pros is a sponsor of my podcast, the Limitless Leadership Podcast. And this is a partnership that I have been really ecstatic about. With the first time I got to meet Brian and Kim, I knew exactly these are the type of folks who I want to be aligned with and who I want to work with. And so I want to start off by saying thank you for that. In terms of who I am, what I do, I am the CEO of Limitless Leadership, and what we do is provide a different type of focused coaching than your traditional coaching companies in the industry, which I would consider performance-based coaching companies. And while we know that performance coaching is necessary, we know it is a critical piece to the puzzle. I firmly believe in the concept of connection creating engagement, and engagement is what increases performance. So as shop owners, we of course want an increase in performance. We want our team members to be top performers. We want the sales to come in. We know that we need to make a profit in order to stay in business. So we're going to be focusing on sales and KPIs that drive the sales. We're mindful of the sales processes and the things that come along with it. However, unconventionally and maybe a little unorthodox, I'm actually considering or suggesting that we shift our focus from performance to connection. And the reason being is because when we can connect and learn how to connect effectively with our team members, we create engaged team members. And studies show that 70% of employees are disengaged at work. Conversely speaking, 80% of people will tell you that they're fully engaged when they receive meaningful feedback at least once per week. So how do we create engaged team members to subsequently increase our performance? We focus on the soft skills. We focus on effectively communicating, on managing our time more efficiently, on delegation, and not dumping, but delegating. We focus on, as shop owners, clearly casting a vision and driving a mission towards that vision. So a lot of what I coach folks on is the soft skills. You mentioned I do have a background in Christian Brothers Automotive. I was the director of service development there for almost a decade. And what that means is that our department would create and facilitate all the training programs for service managers, service advisors, and incoming franchisees. So I was heavily responsible for the creation of our service advisor training and sales training and coaching that came along with it, the guest experience, phone skills, managing phone shoppers, workflow management. So I have a background in performance-based training and coaching. However, the bulk of my coaching, I would say 85% of my coaching is heavy on leadership. Another 15% or so is focused on operational based or performance based coaching, because inevitably we're going to identify opportunities to potentially increase car count or increase your close ratio or your ARO. And so among other KPIs. So as we identify those opportunities within the coaching realm of Limitless Leadership Coaching, sometimes we shift periodically into some operational or performance-based things, but I try to stay heavily focused on the soft skills, helping folks understand the importance of leading through connection to ultimately increase performance. Now, the beauty in all of this, Kim, is that while my focus is on soft skills and leadership coaching, that's the intangibles. I'm trying to teach and coach the intangibles to ultimately get a result on the tangibles, like your numbers. And I feel confident in saying 85, 90% of my clients all have an increase in KPIs since working with Limitless Leadership. And ultimately it's because I know that when the leader gets better, everyone gets better. So when we can learn how to start showing up for our team members, they become more engaged and subsequently the performance increases along with it.
It makes perfect sense to me. I actually earlier this year almost created my own soft skills training program based on just things that we've seen throughout the years. But most recently, within the last year, there have been a couple of things that have come up from different team members where we're like, okay, we need to help them with this, or we need to help them with this. And soft skills are, to me, my definition, soft skills are the things that a lot of people take for granted in thinking that we're just born with, or our parents have taught to their children and that sort of thing. And now with the whole digital age of everything, a lot of soft skills have been lost in that transfer there. So I love that you are focusing on that. And recently so Brian and I just got back from the Mars conference in Utah, and I was scrolling Facebook in the airport on our way home, and I saw Elijah McMillan posted on his Facebook about you were talking about connection and engagement earlier. So he was getting on the airplane, and the flight attendant told him to wait and made him stand at the door while the other flight attendant served the people in first class their drink, and he had to stand there and wait. And he was talking about how that flight attendant could have just stood there, right? But she engaged with him. She connected with him. She asked him about his day and where he was traveling to and that sort of thing. And he said that it made an impact on him, and it was very important that she made him feel special. When not engaging with him, they made it seem like first class more important, right? You need to wait here while we serve them their drinks. But he just talked about the impact that made. So I love how you were talking about connection. And I believe that is at the root. I know in your podcast, you always ask people, what's your definition of leadership? And it kind of threw me off when we were on there. But I think that using the word connection, you can't define leadership if you don't use that. So I just think it's a very smart approach.
It's huge. You know, I believe that we connect through 3 ways, which is authenticity, humility, and vulnerability. And I think many of us, we get so lost in the day to day, and we're so focused on the content before the connection, or the process before the people, or even the profit before the people. But when we can take a step back and realize, acknowledge, and recognize that our greatest assets are our team members. So
Mhm.
how am I showing up for them in a way that helps them and makes them feel heard, understood, acknowledged? You said a key word when you talked about Elijah's experience with the flight attendant. It made him feel special. And one of my favorite quotes comes from Maya Angelou, and she says, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." And ultimately, when you recognize that at the foundation of your leadership and really your shop success is, it's rooted in the connection that you're creating to subsequently create the performance that you're striving for, then you then realize, hey, you want to, leadership is a full-time job, which
Mhm.
means I need to stop focusing on content before connection and process before people and the job title before the name. I want to get to know Kim Walker, the wife, Kim Walker, the person, before Kim Walker, the business owner. I want to get to know Elijah McMillan, the person, before the business owner. And I think for a lot of us, we need to be reminded of the fact that we are with our team members in most cases more than our own family. So
Mhm.
we're working with them regularly. And when we know that poor communication is actually costing shop owners 18% of total salaries being paid out on an annual basis, if I'm a shop owner listening to this, and let's say for simple math purposes, I'm paying $1 million in salary across my entire shop across the entire year. And if those studies ring true, that means that poor communication could be creating sunk cost in the amount of $180,000 per year. You can rest assured I will be focusing on connection to create engagement, which will subsequently increase my performance.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it brings me back to when we had our shop, and like you said, I mean, there's just a huge number of oops that would
Hmm.
happen, and you trace it back to, well, what really caused this? And it very often was a communication issue. So I want to unpack a lot of the things that you really talked about in the very beginning, but let's start with, well, like I just talked about Elijah. When we're trained in things like customer service and communication and leadership, then when we go out into the world, we see holes everywhere,
Hmm.
right? And we judge. I know our son, his first job, his only job was Chick-fil-A. And he learned the very first day, and it wasn't, we asked him, how did they get this into you like that? And he could not answer the question because it was just baked in. It was just part of the culture, that whole my pleasure thing.
Hmm. Yep.
And so his experience from working for Chick-fil-A until he went to West Point was that now we go places, and he can't help but to judge customer service and to judge leadership and to judge communication and that sort of thing. And he's constantly pointing out and cringing at things. So not only when you walk into a shop, because I don't know how often you actually are going to and walking into a shop, but whether it's a shop or just anything, how do you see leaders showing up for their team? Because one might think you can't just see that just blindly, but I feel like you can. I think you can absolutely just walk into a place and see there's good leadership here or
Yeah.
there's not. So what does that look like?
Yeah, not only can you see it, you can also feel it. I
Mm,
mean, this is the intangibles that I talked about earlier that ultimately turn into tangibles. It's the culture. Like when I walk into a shop, which I walk into shops periodically, pretty quickly you can feel the vibe of that shop on any given day. And so what I check for is the energy of the shop. I check for the communication, the body language, the mannerisms, Ultimately, and here's a question that I ask every client of mine to ask themselves: does my team feel the weight of my title or the influence of my leadership?
Mm.
If they're feeling the influence of your leadership, it's a trickle effect. In regards to your son being at Chick-fil-A, the reason he was able to get buy-in quickly is because they understand the importance of training and repetition breeding retention. Repetition breeds retention. I'm repeating myself for a reason because it's going to be retained if I repeat myself. Repetition breeds retention. You know what's interesting is my second job was actually at Chick-fil-A, and I'm dating myself because this was in the 90s. My second job was at Chick-fil-A. We never said my pleasure. Back then, that wasn't a thing. But in the early 2000s, Truett Cathy was visiting a Ritz-Carlton. Now, there's a story I heard in a keynote. I don't know how accurate this is, but I'm hopefully that it was a true story. He was visiting a Ritz-Carlton, and he noticed how attentive each one of the employees there were there to their guest, and they kept saying, "My pleasure. It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure." He loved that so much that he started having it adopted into every Chick-fil-A franchise. But what a lot of people don't know is that it took Truett Cathy 10 years for that to become a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And when we think about Chick-fil-A, a lot of us think about it's my pleasure. When we think about it's my pleasure, we think about Chick-fil-A. But
Mm-hmm.
we have to remember that it took 10 years for that to occur. I saw just a few days ago how Jeff Bezos apparently, again, I don't know how true this is, but Jeff Bezos for 7 years was grinding on Amazon, grinding away and not making a cent. The company wasn't making a cent. He wasn't making a cent. But for 7 years, that's a long time to do something that you believe in
Yep.
for that long and keep on going. But ultimately, repetition breeds retention. And I see that when I go to a shop, because what I know, and we all know this, if you're watching this, you know that a lot of us treat training in the industry like a one-time thing or a once-a-year thing. But training is the foundation of the practice you're going to do consistently. So the idea is when you go to the ASTA Expo in September, or when you go to Ratchet and Wrench, or when you go to Apex, you're going to go and get a lot of great knowledge, but knowledge without application is just information. So
Mm-hmm.
when you go get that content and that knowledge, that's just the training piece. And then we have to remember that 70% of what you're getting at training is forgotten in 24 hours and 90% is forgotten in a week. So when you go to training, take as much back as you can.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be drinking from a fire hose, so take a lot of notes, but understand that when you go back to your shop, this is where the real challenge lies. And that is, how much are you going to practice the information that you got just a short time ago? Because when you go to training, and if you practice, that's repetition, eventually that's going to get results, which is the retention part of it.
Right.
But many of us fail to practice. We go to training and get a lot of great information and make a lot of great relationships, which I'm not knocking at all. I think that's the best part of the conferences, is the relationships that are formed. But we've got to take that knowledge back and practice it, apply it, take action on it in order to get the results that we're destined for.
Absolutely. I have a system. So I use a Remarkable notebook. You know what the
I
Remarkable
do.
is?
Yep.
So I love that thing because there's no distractions. I like the feel of handwriting and that sort of thing. But I created a template. So every time I go to a training sort of event or a conference or whatever, I have this template that I copy and use. And I'm used to where the pages are and all that kind of stuff. But my very first page is a post-conference to-do list. So all throughout the conference, as I'm, you know, recognizing things I need to do, or I want to read, or I want to do this, or I want to do that, I go put that on that first page, and
Love
it's my
that.
takeaways. But we were talking this weekend at the Mars conference. They did these breakouts, and they cycled through 3 different groups, and each one of them, I remember exactly that coming up is like everybody's excited, they're empowered, they're motivated with all these great ideas, and they have their to-do list, but it's don't go back on Monday and get right back into your schedule. Go ahead and put an appointment on your calendar with yourself to debrief yourself and put some things on your calendar to continue what they've learned. But a lot of shop owners, not all, but a good chunk of shop owners were technicians first. And then they come into this world. And for me, I feel like in that, as a technician in a technician world, there's not necessarily this big focus on being a leader. Like you're a technician, get in, grind, turn the hours, turn the wrenches, do the thing. And so I think sometimes these shop owners come into being suddenly the leader, but they don't know that they're not a leader. What is your, like, maybe self-awareness or self-assessment phase maybe in helping them know what they don't know? You know what I mean? Like, they might not even know that they're not a good leader. They might think they're a good leader, and then they don't even know. And here they're going years and years, and they're creating churn and losing employees
Yep.
when they're really the problem.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. We have to remember that it costs shop owners 6 to 9 months of a team member's salary to replace them.
Mhm.
So one of the focus points should be on, how am I leveling up as a leader? How am I sharpening my axe as a leader? So to answer your question, with all my clients that I work with, we go through a 3-phase process in leadership coaching, which is number 1, the discovery phase. This is where I learn a lot about you and who you are, why you think the way that you do, why you operate the way that you do, which is not a bad thing by any means, but it gives me a good understanding of really what has shaped you into the person that you are today and the person you're trying to be tomorrow. And so then I can customize the second phase of the program based on my understanding of you, which is the action phase. In the action phase, we work heavily on leading the most challenging person we will ever lead, which is ourself, and navigating one of the toughest battles we're ever going to face, which is in between the ears. So a lot of what we talk about is leadership mindset type stuff. We get into how to level up, how to sharpen our axe, how to recognize that you're going from player to coach.
Mhm.
And what we're accustomed to is we see high performing team members, like you suggested, let's say a high performing technician who turns into a shop owner, and they're going from a player to a coach, which is completely separate roles, completely separate responsibilities. But now in the coach's seat, they struggle to stay there because they see their players doing these processes or doing these things that they've mastered. They see them doing them, quote unquote, incorrectly, or in other words, differently. So they jump out of the coach's seat to go save the day, which means they're not delegating, they're micromanaging, and
Mhm.
they're not, and they're inevitably stunting everyone's growth and development, including their own, by jumping out of the coach's seat. And this is the old adage of give a man to fish and he'll eat for a day, or teach a man to fish and he'll eat for a lifetime. So
Mhm.
what I do with my clients is I help them stay in the coach's seat so they know and understand how to teach their team how to fish, how to lead, how to coach, how to train, and how to manage. Because all 4 of those are necessary, but all 4 are done different. And we have methods for all 4 of those within Limitless Leadership. But being able to understand who I am, why I am the way that I am, what my strengths are, what my opportunity areas are. Opportunity areas is a nicer way of saying weakness.
Mhm.
We essentially go through a SWOT analysis, SWOT, strength, weakness, opportunities, threats. We go through a SWOT analysis with our clients to determine the areas that we can improve on, the areas that you're strong in, and how to align across the entire team as well.
So speaking of training, a lot of what you just talked about is the shop owner focused, but in order for them to lead and ultimately grow and build a business that allows them to do what they want to do and enjoy their life,
Mhm.
traveling or whatever it might be, they have to grow leaders from within. So what does that look like for a shop that, the shop owner has come in, they've created their business, and they're the ones, running around with their hair on fire,
Yeah.
doing all the things. But eventually they get into the industry, they're taking classes, they're learning this, they're learning that. And it's time for them to build leaders from within. So what does that look like for a
Yeah.
shop?
There are 2 paths you can take. The first path is you can hire Limitless Leadership to work with your team, because ultimately we like to give shop owners the gift of time and money by you investing in your team and hiring us to work with your team. So we take that off your plate. We know you got a full plate already, but it's your responsibility to grow and develop your leaders within your shop. Let us do that for you. The second is to take the information that you gain at conferences or through your own coaching or wherever you're gaining your knowledge from, podcasts, books, what have you, and understand what it looks like to properly train your team members. I think there are 3 opportunity areas that many companies, regardless of the industry, are failing to capture right now, which is effective onboarding, proper training, and consistent coaching. So if
Mhm.
you know how to properly train your team members on the newly acquired knowledge that you gained, that way you can put it into action. It's not just information. then your team members can grow and develop themselves as well, and you're creating leaders within them as well. But ultimately, the key word that comes to mind when I think about why this doesn't occur is trust, or lack thereof. A lot of us struggle with trusting that I can empower this individual to make decisions, or to do things the way that our shop needs to be done. And ultimately, it's your responsibility as a leader to be able to lay the foundation. You're laying the groundwork, whether it be through the vision that you've clearly cast, the mission that driving towards the vision, or the core values that are not just hanging on the wall, but you're truly living them each and every day. When you have that core, that sturdy, firm foundation, I mean, you're in a great position, because now you have team members who are bought in, who are engaged. We talked about that earlier, who can now increase performance on your behalf because of your influence.
Yeah. So tell me a story about how you've seen that play out in a shop that you've worked with, like maybe I don't know, I'm dreaming of like a testimonial of a shop owner who came from technician to shop owner, and maybe there's just something cool that you saw where am I making any sense?
Yeah,
Like
of course. Yeah. I'll,
what's
I'll, I'll give you two testimonials. And one is, I don't know that the first one is answering the question that you're looking for, but I want to share this because of how rewarding
yeah.
this has been. One of the things that we come to understand about leadership is that leadership is not just a professional word. Leadership needs to be applied at home as well. And so a lot of the things that we talk about, communication being, easily at the top of the list. You think about the biggest challenge in your shop, most of your challenges are rooted in communication or lack thereof. But even at home, like you think about biggest challenges that you have at home, communication is typically at the top of the list. And so the beauty in what this looks like is it can be applied at work. It can also be applied at home. And I've had multiple people share with me how this coaching has not only helped them professionally, but also helped them in their relationships or at
Mhm.
home. I had a client about a year and a half ago just break down on a call, and share with me, like he was like, Josh, this coaching has saved my marriage. I've had other folks say, like, this has restored my relationship with my kids. And ultimately what I know is that when you are effectively leading people and coaching people and training people and managing people, you get to create two things so that you can provide two things. You get to create safety and trust so that you can provide clarity and direction. And if you
Mhm.
think about it, clarity and direction, those two words, for any job that you've either left or lost, it's very likely that you didn't have both clarity and direction. So when we can understand how to connect authentically, humbly, vulnerably, so that we can create safety and trust, we can then create engaged employees where we can provide and receive clarity and direction. And that's going to increase your team member retention. The other testimonial that I want to share, is kind of a blanket testimonial, but I've had half a dozen shop owners. I'll say this: most of my clients are multi-shop owners. Not all of them, but most of them are multi-shop owners. And the way our structure typically works is a shop owner will invest in their team members, and they'll hire Limitless leadership to work with their lead technician or their service manager or someone at the shop who is formerly leading other people who may not be the owner.
Mhm.
We also do work with owners too. So I don't want to make it sound like we don't work with certain people, but the
Yeah.
majority of our clients are actually service managers, advisors, or lead technicians because they're formerly leading people. And I've probably had half a dozen, at least, certainly half a dozen, reach out, and say that something along these lines: the introduction and the implementation of one-on-ones have been a game changer in our business. And what I mean by this is we talk quite heavily on the importance of one-on-ones, the impact of daily huddles, even the addition of toolbox talks, which they're all three different, but they're all three necessary. And when we have one-on-ones, this allows us the opportunity to create safety and trust so that we can provide clarity and direction. And this is where we finally form engaged employees. And when this happens, you're going to inevitably see a subsequent increase in performance. Numbers increase. This is also why we don't typically lose clients. I mean, I'm not saying that we haven't, but we don't typically lose clients because we see what we're able to do is we're able to turn disengaged employees into engaged employees, and the
Mhm.
numbers follow suit.
Yeah, yeah, I get it. And you're talking our language. Even before we were an EOS company, we started doing, I think, what you're calling a daily huddle. We call our daily stand up.
Yeah.
So when we were in the office before COVID, um, we had a daily stand up, and it literally was all of us standing up together in a circle with the intent of this is going to be a short meeting because we're all standing up, and we just each person we'd go around what's one thing you're grateful for this morning,
Mm.
and what's your top priority for the day. And that did a couple of things. And to your point on connection and engagement, it didn't take me long to realize that my purpose in that daily stand up, which after COVID, we kept doing it. It just was a morning. We still call it our stand up meeting, but it's on Zoom and some people might be standing up. But my purpose in that was in person. You physically get to know people, right? I mean,
Mhm.
you're in this same physical space together. And from body language or whatever, I could tell Josh is not himself today. And so afterwards, I would pull Josh aside and say, hey, what's going on? Are you okay? Is everything all right? Now in Zoom, I still can see it. You can still see over Zoom that someone is not themselves. And so I would send them a Slack message. Hey, Josh, you don't seem like you're the regular Josh today. Is everything okay? And I can't tell you how many times people have said, I really appreciate that you ask. Yeah, I had a fight with my kids this morning. Or, there's been multiple very personal things that people bring to work with them.
Mhm.
And that stand up meeting, especially when we start with gratitude, gives the chance to reframe and reshape their mindset for the day ahead instead of coming straight from whatever happened at home that day right into work, sitting down and then trying to get their mind right and do work. So it's really been a big deal. And then the one-on-ones, we we have a lot of mentoring that happens here within our company, and mentoring is not required. I don't go, hey, Josh, I'd like to mentor you, right? They're coming to me saying, generally, it's like, I mean, I'm only 52 years old, but I've had a very full life, full of all kinds of things. And just the experiences that I've had, I have team members who are like, I could really talk to you about this or that. And so those one-on-ones, the daily stand-up meetings, and then our EOS things, our quarterly conversations, and all this stuff really just helps, like you said, build I'm saying build those engaged team members, but it's really about them knowing that we care about them.
Yeah.
And it just makes a huge difference. So speaking of COVID, so many things have changed because of that one season in life. When we're talking about the workplace, I'm curious if you're seeing the same thing that Brian and I have seen. What do you feel employees want most from management in today's post-COVID world in the workplace?
I think you just hit the nail on the head, which is a perfect segue into this question, and that is they want to know that you care. A phrase that I love is that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And when you get to create safety and trust, the provision of clarity and direction, it comes easy.
Mm,
Ultimately, as long as your team members know and truly believe that their voices are heard, their opinions matter, and their ideas are considered, you're going to have engaged employees. You're going to have a low turnover ratio. You're going to have an increase in performance because people know that you care. Like something I've been sharing quite a bit lately is that the biggest ROI in leadership is actually recognition. Many of us as leaders, we focus on providing directive after directive after directive instead of providing clarity and direction.
mm,
Or we're focusing on what someone's doing wrong versus what someone's doing right, which means I'm focusing on reprimanding versus recognizing. But ultimately, if I can focus on recognition and helping this individual truly know and believe that their voice is heard, their opinions matter, and their ideas are considered, they know that I care. There's already safety and trust there. It was built. So being able to provide that sense of safety for your team, which means that we know that things are not going to go as planned. We know that there's going to be mistakes that they're going to be made. We know that we're going to fail along the way, but these failures don't make us a failure. Like when we lose, it doesn't make us a loser, and these actions don't become our identity. But you, as a leader, as a shop owner, or as a business owner, in your case, Kim, you and Brian you're able to create safety and trust through the connections that you're making on a regular basis, so that there's freedom there for your team to be empowered to make decisions. I love the fact that at your daily stand-up, you'll start by beginning with gratitude, and the whole purpose is for the reshaping and reframing of their minds to set the tone for the day. What's interesting is the very first question that I ask every client on a coaching call. I mean, outside of the obvious, like, how are you doing? And when I say, how are you doing? I'm like, how are you doing up here? I'm pointing to my head and in here to my heart. Yeah. But after that, the first question I ask is, what are some of your latest wins? Because we know that naturally we're going to gravitate towards the negative. Humans have up to 60,000 thoughts per day. And studies show that 80% of our thoughts are negative, 90% of our thoughts are repetitive. So there's no wonder why we regularly experience stress and worry and doubt and concern, anxiety and fear. But fear is simply false evidence appearing real. And we're always going to find evidence in the things that we believe. So one of the greatest mistakes any of us can make is assuming all of our thoughts are true. So how can I actually reframe my thoughts? I can do that through challenging them, asking questions like, what are some of my latest wins? I can quickly identify the negatives, but what about the positives? And so being able to be mindful of the fact that if even, speaking of COVID, I saw a report maybe 2 years ago, so I'm not sure if these numbers have changed, but post-COVID, anxiety increased over 300%. Now, yes. I would hope that those numbers have decreased because we've learned how to manage our stress or how to manage our thoughts. That's the hope anyway. I mean, we have the resources, but are we being resourceful? My hope is that the numbers have decreased, but regardless, they have increased. And this is why it's so critical that we know how our team is doing. Yeah. How's their stress level? How's their workload? Like, how are you personally doing before we get into any kind of content about work?
So how often do you find that it is that record player, cassette tape recording of false beliefs that you're having to help people overcome? Because now we're getting close to a counseling line as opposed to a coaching line. But
yeah,
you're there, you're in the moment, but I can't help but think that you're uncovering that more often than not.
I'm so glad you brought this up, specifically the counseling line, because you're absolutely right. What happens is when we start working together, it does feel like a coaching call most of the time. However, it also feels like a counseling call sometimes, depending on where things go. That's one of the first things I share with folks on our introductory call is it might feel like a coaching call sometimes. It might feel like a counseling call sometimes. It might feel like life coaching at times, but it's always going to feel like two people who trust each other and where there's confidentiality there as well. So ultimately, my job, my responsibility, my obligation to you, if you're a client of mine, is to create safety and trust so that we can provide clarity and direction. But yeah, you're right. It does often feel like we're kind of towing the line. Ask the question again, Kim, because I know I'm not answering your specific question.
No, I think you did. And I mean, I don't know that I could repeat it exactly. It's like, look, I'm from the South. I don't have recipes, right? My mama taught me you just put a little bit of this in and a little bit of that in.
Yeah.
And so when I have friends who are like, how did you cook that? And I'm like, I don't know. Every time it's a little different. So I think that you really answered it. I was really just getting at how often are you seeing the issue is that replay of the thoughts, the 80% and then the percentage where it's just net, there's 80% negative and then it's that same repetitive, because that's what is inhibiting your client, that service
Yeah.
advisor from whatever the thing is. So, I mean, I think you covered it. It was really just about how often are you finding that that's the problem?
And to specifically answer that question, it's high. I mean, I don't wanna say 100%,
Mhm.
but I'm not gonna shy away from saying at least 90%.
Yeah.
A lot of what we talk about, sometimes it can be recurring, and this is where we talk about having CTAs, calls to action.
Yep.
I typically share in trainings that meetings are a waste of time, and then I wait for everyone's jaw to be picked up off the ground. Like, wait, you're a leadership coach. You said meetings are a waste of time, but the reality is they are. They are if we don't have calls to action beyond the meeting.
Mhm.
We're really good at talking about our intentions and
For
what we're
sure.
gonna do. Like when we go to the ASTA Expo, we're all gonna talk about the things that we're gonna do when we get back to our shop or to our place, right? Um, but how many of us are actually going to do that? And so being able to have legitimate calls to action that are taken beyond the meeting and even beyond a coaching call, it's critical to getting out of that loop that you talked about.
Yeah. Well, speaking of safety and letting people have a soft place to land and be themselves and all of that kind of stuff, it it sounds great and I love that, but you can't have a business, you can't work with people without conflict coming
Mhm.
up. So I want to switch from I mean, I don't want to switch. I want to talk about conflict and tension in that environment of safety. So like how does a leader step in and help solve or point people in the direction of solving or managing conflict or tension? Because people work with people. My pastor used to always say, we were going to put it on a t-shirt, people gonna people.
Yeah, he's right.
Emotions are going to
Yeah.
fly. People are going to get annoyed. But how does the leader do that without micromanaging or just avoiding the issue? How do they come in and help the team deal with conflict and tension?
There are so many directions I feel like I can go here, and so I'm probably gonna go all over the place, but I'll
Okay.
begin by sharing that difficult conversations don't have to be difficult.
Mm,
Ultimately, when you're creating that firm foundation, when you're laying the groundwork and setting clear expectations, difficult conversations don't have to be difficult. A lot of us, where we falter is we think that we're providing clarity and direction, but we're not actually providing it as crystal clear as we think. And so when things, not if, but when things don't go the way that we talked about or envisioned, then we get upset because expectations were not met. The
mhm,
problem is we didn't clearly communicate them like we thought we did.
mhm,
And we can't get upset with team members who don't live up to expectations that we don't clearly communicate. And so when I say that communication is the biggest challenge across every, not just shop, but every organization, regardless of the industry, that's quite frankly an understatement. When there's a breakdown in communication, voids tend to get created, and oftentimes negativity fills those voids.
mm,
So if we're trying to affect change and know that conflict is going to occur, we have to still implement a spirit of trust in our team members to do these responsibilities that they've been tasked with, all the while communicating with them on a regular basis, because what gets measured gets managed, and we can prioritize communication in the process. So here's an example that I'll provide. Situational leadership is when you're adapting to the needs of a situation and adapting to the needs and the abilities of those that you're leading. So that means that if I'm leading 3 different people and each one of those 3 people have 2 different sets of responsibilities, there could be 6 types of leadership styles I might have to implement across the shop.
yeah.
So I can't lead the way I am naturally drawn to lead, or I am inclined to lead. I have to recognize that Kim operates different than Brian, and Brian operates different from Caroline. And knowing that I'm going to be leading each one of them potentially different, managing them potentially different, training them potentially different, and I'll be doing so within the projects that you're responsible for too. So this can be a challenge, because if we're not mindful of that, we have no idea how to lead one person, let alone multiple projects and the people that they're managing.
Sure.
And this is where we run into the problem of communication and not having the conversation that we should have, which turns into inaccurate thoughts, because if I'm supposed to have a conversation with you, Kim, and I avoid it because I'm afraid of what you might think or how you might feel, or maybe things will improve without me saying anything, and so I just avoid this potential difficult conversation, well, then it turns into something that is much greater than it needed to be. I start thinking something that may not be accurate. You start thinking something that may not be accurate. And what we know is that our thoughts dictate feelings, our feelings dictate actions, and our actions dictate results. So we're both thinking something that may not be true, which means that it's dictating feelings that are, in this case, unnecessary and
Yes.
inaccurate. Therefore, we take actions that are not conducive to the results that we're collectively trying to achieve. And this is a massive hurdle that every single one of, I mean, any shop that deals with this, any business that deals with this. And so this is really where the leadership coaching, the managing, the training comes into play.
Yeah. Before we have just under maybe 15 minutes. We don't always go a full hour either. But I really want to hit on, there was something you said that triggered this thought in my head and reminded me that I wanted to ask you this anyway, so it's perfect timing, is burnout. And that, we work with top tier shops. Okay. These are shops that have been around. They are often, like your clients, are often multi-shop owners. They have been here, done that. They've worked with this marketing company. They've worked with this marketing company. They're trying to get through to the next level. They're really pushing. They're involved in the industry. They've got a lot of employees and they're tired.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to get to the next level, what they see is this huge ladder, this climb, and everybody is so proud in this world of being busy and grinding and grit and all this.
Mm-hmm.
And look, I am too, been there, did it, still doing it. But burnout is real. How are you helping shop owners deal with burnout?
I will reply with a question. Kim, I know as a business owner, you are passionate about what you do, who you do it with, your team. You also, I believe, have purpose. You know your purpose in what you're doing, and it's easy to get burnt out when you don't know what your purpose is. It's easy to get burnt out when you're not motivated, but motivation is like a flame, and flames come and go. And so purpose trumps motivation. Um, I am 2.5 years into this whole entrepreneurship thing. And I used to jokingly say that I left a 9 to 5 to work a 24/7. And now I'm like, no, that's not really a joke. Like I feel like I'm doing this all the time. But here's the thing: work is not work for me. Like the type of work I do is not work for me. I love what I do, and I have to remind myself to shut it down when pick a good time of any day and just shut it down for the day, because I don't get burnt out, but I definitely get tired, and I think there's a difference because
Sure.
I think what I'd want to know is like, are the shop owners that are communicating them being tired, my first word of encouragement is it's likely that you're not really burnt out. You probably are just tired. And this is where time blocking and compartmentalizing and setting and keeping boundaries come into play. This is where we talk about leveling up and sharpening your axe, working on yourself spiritually, physically, emotionally, academically, financially, so that you don't find yourself pouring from an empty cup. Because a lot of us want to help, we want to serve, we want to take care of and love on our guests and our clients, but we don't know how to say no. And what happens is we say yes to everyone and everything around us, and inevitably we're saying no to ourselves and no to our family and no to some priorities that we shouldn't be saying no to. And we find ourselves pouring from an empty cup. We're tired, and now we're feeling like we're burnt out. But the reality is, it's possible that you're not burnt out. It's possible that you're just not managing your time effectively.
Yeah,
Now,
I think that differentiation is, did I just interrupt you?
No, go ahead.
I think that's a huge eye-opening statement, is the differentiation between tired and burnt out. Because burnt out is a buzzword right now. It's kind of sexy to say that, and I hear it more and more often, but you're right. When you start talking to someone and I ask them, well, how's your sleep? When was the last time you worked out? Or when was your last vacation? And so that is exactly what it is. That's why Brian and I are so intentional. You know, when you are like we are, and, you know, most shop owners are going to 1 or 2 conferences a year, and we're going to like 12 to 16 a year.
Yeah.
And people regularly ask me. Just yesterday, somebody asked me, I don't know how you do it. My niece just texted me and said, she didn't ask, are you traveling? She said, when's your next trip? And I replied, literally, I'm pulling it up. It's right here.
Yeah.
Any new travel coming up? And I said, haha, always. Just got back from Utah. Brian is in Florida. Here's what's upcoming this year in 2025. And it is September. Raleigh, Florida, New York, Vegas is Brian, not me. And then I'm going to Philly, but Brian's not going. And then we have Baltimore. And she was like, okay.
Yeah.
You know, and so and most of those are work trips. Yeah, only one of those is personal. It's the Army Navy football game, and that's Baltimore. It's the last trip of the year. All of them are work. And so that's why when we are traveling for work, we still try to do something to make the trip like enjoyable and fun. The conferences are fun, but they're exhausting. And your toggle button, your toggle switch is constantly on. So I love how you made that differentiation, and you talked about, you know, our being is more than just our body, right? There's the mental aspect of it. There's the spiritual aspect, the physical, and all of the things in between. So I think that's very important for people to realize that in order to fill that cup and be able to help other people, you have to be taking care of yourself, and those boundaries are super critical.
Yeah. Yeah. I say, Kim, I mean, when we hear the term be selfish, automatically it's a negative connotation.
Mm-hmm.
And in a lot of cases it is, and it's justified. But when I say be selfish, take care of yourself. I mean, whatever that looks like, whatever self-care looks like for you, it's going to look different for different people. When people meet me, they assume I'm an extrovert because I'm speaking and I'm doing trainings, and I do genuinely love people, but I'm an introvert. And so I do feel the exhaustion after a conference that you talk about. When you're on, whether it be for a call, whether it be for a podcast, whether it be for a training session, a conference, I mean, afterwards, I need some sleep because I need to get recharged. And if I don't get recharged, and I'm not saying, and if I'm saying yes to everyone and everything, and I'm not saying no to things that I need in order to serve that person adequately, the best analogy I typically share with clients is when you get on a plane, you travel enough, you've heard this hundreds of times, you get on a plane and the pilot is going to say, all right, if something were to go awry, you know, the oxygen mask is going to fall from the ceiling. Who does he tell to put the oxygen mask on first?
You.
Right? Yeah. I mean, even if you got kids near you, elderly people around you, you serve yourself first. And the same can be said in life. If you are exercising self-care and setting, and more importantly, keeping boundaries and saying yes to the right things and no to the necessary things, not only can you sharpen your axe and level up and be the best version of yourself, it also allows you to effectively serve those in your community as well.
One of my favorite books I've ever read, I think it's geared towards women, but men can absolutely learn from this. It is a faith-based book. It's by Lisa Turkhurst, and it's called The Best Yes. And it changed my life. It opened my eyes and made a huge impact on me. And it's literally what you were saying earlier. It has to do with boundaries and all that. But it is about your yes being yes, your no being no, being unafraid to say no. When you say no, you open up space for someone else to do what they were called to do. Whereas I used to say yes to everything. I had FOMO. I'd go all these conferences. One thing I don't know that if you have not picked up on this yet yourself, or weren't aware of it from the beginning, you're gonna pick up on it very soon. With that toggle button, you know, we teach classes everywhere. We are on podcasts. We have our own podcast. You become the face. You get out there, and more people know you than you know them. And so I'm walking around a conference and people are approaching me that I don't know. And so Brian and I have had to come to the realization that we have to be on all the time. And so I am an extrovert. I want all the chit chat talk. I'll talk to anyone about anything, anywhere, doesn't matter. But even I have to retreat and go and get away from all of it. So I think that this was a great conversation, because shop owners become that in their community. When they start doing all the marketing that we talk about and leading the way that you're talking about, they're going to rise in their community, and people are going to be seeing them when they don't know people, but they're on, and they have to be able to take care of themselves to do that. So Josh, let's end on a personal note. What is a leadership practice that you personally do that you would like these top tier shop owners that are listening to adopt into their leadership game?
I'll answer this two ways. Hopefully one of them answers your question. So I'll say, I'll start by talking about the style that I truly believe in, which is servant leadership. I'm a veteran of the Air Force, and I'm dating myself, but I was in the Air Force 20 years ago. And I was accustomed to a positional style of leadership, which is historically, that's what a lot of folks are used to, which is a positional style of leadership, where if someone outranks you, or if someone, basically if someone outranks you, they tell you what to do and you just do it.
Yeah.
But servant leadership is different. Like, the way that I view this is, you have employee at the top of this chart, and then you have boss on the bottom. That's positional style leadership, where it's the opposite. Boss is on top, employee's on bottom. Employee reports to the boss. With servant leadership, I'm going to completely do a 180. So now I have employee at the top, boss on the bottom, but I'm going to change this verbiage around. Employee becomes team member, boss becomes leader, and I'm going to add the word servant in front of that as well. So a servant leader is now on the bottom of this chart. Doesn't mean that the servant leader works for this team member, but it does mean that this servant leader is investing in, pouring into, helping grow and develop this team member to be the best versions of themselves. So that's one style of leadership that I believe in. I believe in hiring people to help them be the best versions of themselves. And the way that looks like from a leadership perspective is, you're not really telling them anything. I'm emphasizing that word for a reason, but you're sharing with them ideas of which you can collaborate and grow and invest together. You're providing clarity and direction. So I don't want to make it sound like you're not, quote unquote, in charge, but I'm going to speak out of the other side of my mouth now and say that as a leader, you're actually not, like, a goal is for you to not be in charge of anything, but you're responsible for everything. Because if you're effectively delegating to your team members, they're now in charge of specific responsibilities. They have authority over these responsibilities that you are now ultimately responsible for the outcome of. That's one answer to your question. The second answer is, I myself over the years have tried to do things my way, and it often doesn't go as planned. So I'll say I'm a faith-based person, Kim, and as a believer, I have learned to just step back and really let go and do my best to focus on sharpening my axe and growing myself spiritually, physically, emotionally, academically, and financially. And the more I can level up spiritually, the more I can hear what God is directing me to do and do my best to listen and obey. The more I can level up physically, I feel better. I'm more focused. I'm feeding myself the right things. I'm drinking more water. I'm, not only, going to the gym, but I'm also, in the kitchen, doing the right things. Emotionally, I do believe in the power of counseling and therapy. As a coach, I'm biased, but as a coach, I have my own coach. I think everyone should have a coach. I work with my coach once a month. I work with a counselor once a month. I'm also married to a licensed counselor, so I get free counseling even when I don't want it, which is all the time. But the good news is she's great at it.
Too.
Well, the thing is, like, she's great at it and I need it. So ultimately, I understand how our thoughts dictate feelings and our feelings dictate actions and our actions dictate results. Just because I'm a leadership coach doesn't mean that I'm always going to have it quote unquote figured out, or that I'm going to stop learning. I'm committed to being a lifelong learner and thinking like a rookie. So I do work on leveling up emotionally, understanding the 3 Ps, where I can pause, process, and pivot. Because I know that when emotions are high, logic tends to be low. And I know that emotional maturity is having feelings, but not letting my feelings have me. So I get to pause, process, and pivot when I'm experiencing a high range of emotions. Academically, I'm a podcast junkie. I'm listening to podcasts. I have my own podcast, the Limitless Leadership Podcast. I read a lot of books. I also am an author. I wrote this book behind me, if you're watching, Leading a Legacy, and I'm reading quite a bit. And this is coming from someone who did not do very well in school. I was not a reader back then, but I forced myself to adopt this habit of reading, and eventually it stuck with me. And then lastly, financially, I am always trying to do my best to stick to a budget, to make the wise choices financially. I'm not an expert on any of these 5 things, but I'm mindful of all 5 of these things. And so when I talk about sharpening our axe and leveling up, these are ways that I personally am leading myself so that I can effectively lead those around me.
Love it. Well, tell everybody, where do they go? How do they get in touch with you? How can they connect with you?
Yeah, thanks again, Kim, for the opportunity. You can find me on social media, on Instagram and YouTube. It's at The Bearded Leader. So it should be fairly easy to remember, The Bearded Leader. And then Facebook and LinkedIn, just search my name, Josh Parnell, and you should find me. My website is limitlessleadership.co. It's not .com. .com was charging me over $100,000 for the M, and I said not today. So I'll do limitlessleadership.co. So you can find me there. You can find what services look like in terms of coaching, training, speaking. I also offer an online leadership course called the Limitless Leadership Blueprint. I will share with your audience that as clients of Shop Marketing Pros, you do receive a 10% discount if you visit this link that Kim is sharing here to visit the Limitless Leadership Blueprint. And ultimately, I'd love to just connect with you. So if you go to, I think if you should go to the website and be able to connect with me. If not, you can just email me as well, josh@limitlessleadership.co, and we can jump on a discovery call together and just connect. I'm not going to sell you anything unless you want to be sold on anything. Ultimately, I love people. I love connecting with people. And even if you just want to share with me where you're at in your journey, I'm happy to help any way that I can. Limitless, Kim.
What did I do?
Limited. We're putting limits around this thing.
What is happening in my world over here?
Yeah, Josh at limitlessleadership.co. Limitless.
Limitless. You know what it is?
It's a tongue twister. That's what it is. I don't know why. I should have named it something different.
No, I'm gonna tell you what it is. It just hit me. Limitlessleadership.com. It is
.co.
And it won't let you edit. All right, Josh at limitless. My God.
Leadership.
I'm embarrassing myself.
Even on my own podcast, Kim, I regularly butcher Limitless Leadership. Like it's a tongue twister. I have no idea why I didn't just go with something easier.
Here's the thing.
That's it right there. Thank you.
There's a store that growing up, the Limited.
Oh yeah, I remember that. A clothing store.
That store. I don't even know if it's still a thing. And so that's what I guess I want to go shopping.
Don't we all?
Anyways, hey, thank you so much. It was fun to have kind of a different chat. And I really just got some great stuff out of that. And we will see you in a couple of weeks in Raleigh at the ASTA show. Don't forget to come to our pre-party that we're sponsoring. It apparently is going to be out of this world.
Yeah.
That is the theme there. So, hey, I really appreciate it. I'm going to email you to get on our podcast and all that good stuff. But I'm going to go ahead and hit end stream. For those of you who watch later on, feel free to continue dropping your comments here on the YouTube channel. We do pay attention to that. So if you have a question, we will get it to Josh, or you can email it to him yourself, and definitely click on those links. I don't know why they show up like they do here without the spaces, and I spaced it out and made it look all great and everything, and it's looking kind of funky in there. But anyways, y'all just drop your comments, leave your questions, and we will get them answered for you. So until next time, we'll see you next month right back here in our Facebook group for the next client coaching Q&A.